Hey gang, Froggy here, and today I'm revealing my real voice. Just kidding, this is Jefficus, and with me is Froggy PhD. Froggy, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Froggy. I wasn't expecting that. That was great.
I know, I snuck
Uh,
up on you.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Alright guys, let me introduce today's video topic. Age of Sigmar, is it good? Some of you are diehard 40k fans, and you could not give a damn about Age of Sigmar. But the setting is actually good. One of the biggest issues is that there really isn't too much of the setting. There aren't too many mediums in which you, as a consumer, could experience Age of Sigmar. So, Froggy, let's talk about this today. What the heck even is Age of Sigmar?
So, Age of Sigmar is the fantasy branch of Games Workshop that kind of took over from when fantasy was, like, when the original Warhammer Fantasy was, like, removed, to be the opposite to the sci-fi of 40k.
Right. As most of us know, Games Workshop basically has two primary settings for Warhammer. There's 40k, there's like the sci-fi setting, and then there's Warhammer Fantasy, which is kind of the original setting of Warhammer. Within these two settings, there are actually 4 IPs. Froggy, do you know off the top of your head what those are?
Well, it's the Old World, Age of Sigmar, 40k, and I assume you're meaning 30k as the fourth one?
Correct. And that's not me classifying the 4 IPs, that's Games Workshop classifying the 4 IPs. From a business perspective, this is how they look at Warhammer in total. It's the entire umbrella, right? These are the 4 IPs that they focus on, these are the 4 IPs that they're trying to push, and that's kind of categorically what they've separated them into. So,
Yeah.
talk to me about Age of Sigmar. How long has it been around? What is it all about? What even spawned it?
So Age of Sigmar is actually 10 this year. It's its 10th anniversary, so it's 10 years old. It was given birth to back when Warhammer Fantasy was sort of pulled in and then sort of written off and destroyed. And a lot of people hate Age of Sigmar for that. So that didn't really help with its popularity when it was created.
So what is Age of Sigmar Spearhead? I keep seeing things about Spearhead popping up everywhere.
So if you know Kill Team in 40k, Spearhead is essentially that for Age of Sigmar. So it's just a smaller, more accessible tabletop of Age of Sigmar.
A bit more small scale.
Yeah.
So Games Workshop kind of came in and they had Warhammer Fantasy. They launched the End Times, which effectively put an end to that setting.
Yeah.
Age of Sigmar comes around. It's basically this fantasy post-apocalyptic setting that is the aftermath of the End Times. And like you said, a lot of fans are not happy or weren't happy with them putting an end to the previous setting. You and I are both avid readers. You know, you've read a 40k book and I've read at least like 80. So when it comes to ending a story, do you think that was a good decision? Do you think that Games Workshop like has the right to end a story like that?
Yeah, I mean it's its own IP, it can do whatever it wants, but because it was a game from the 70s or whenever it started. I'm not old enough, so I don't know when fantasy started. It had been around for like 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
People had a lot of models to play that game. People had spent a lot of money to play that game. So when they ended it, a lot of people did that thing where they're like, well, we hate this, we don't want it, blah blah blah, we can't play anymore, everything's ruined, and they were like trashing their armies and like burning codexes and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like you could have just kept playing with your friends, you just wouldn't have been able to play at like Warhammer tournaments.
Yeah,
So
and there wouldn't be like any more updated rules or anything.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of an overreaction, though. I guess the
Yeah.
way that I could relate it to myself is basically the live service game paradox. So, like, I played Destiny for a really, really long time. put a lot of hours into that game, probably like 2,000, 3,000 hours, which is crazy, but for Destiny, those are rookie numbers, I assure you. And when Destiny 2 came out, nothing carried over. It was just like, whoa, wait, what? Why are we hitting the reset button on something that I was under the impression at the time was going to be continued for 10 years? Because Bungie, the guys who developed Destiny, had stated that Destiny was going to be a 10-year kind of like live service game, but they had not stated at the time that they were going to do a sequel or anything. I don't think they were against doing one. They just hadn't really outright come and said it. And so a lot of the people like myself who had devoted a lot of time to the game were like, what the hell, dude? I'm about to lose everything. And the scheme surfaced when we started to farm for the exact same weapons, the exact same gear, and the exact same cosmetics that we had already earned in Destiny 1. I could see that happening in, I mean, we've seen it in 40k with the Primaris Marines, right? Having to rebuy the same models. Has anything like that ever happened in Age of Sigmar?
Yeah.
Oh.
A couple years ago.
Wait, how old is Age of Sigmar again?
It's 10.
Oh no, it's already
10
happening.
this year.
Okay.
So a couple years ago, 4th edition launched, and so when 4th edition was like announced, everyone was like, oh, it's gonna be great, it's just gonna be like retuning, refining rules, like it's not gonna really ruin anything for anyone. And then it came out, and it was basically a massive rewrite of a lot of things. It, like, I think there was something like 80 odd kits that were just like gone. They were just legended. And it just meant that a lot of people's armies were just like one model left that they could play.
That's
so,
insane.
Yeah, it's happened.
Because these are physical products. You know, it's almost like, well, I can't even compare it to something like Magic the Gathering, because you kind of understand with Magic the Gathering that there are different editions of the game, and you could only play certain cards in what's known as Standard, and then Standard phases certain cards out and everything. So you kind of understand your value proposition there. With something like this 4th edition release kind of retiring all these kits, that's insanity, especially if people aren't really told up front, like, hey, this is kind of our business model. This is what we're going to be doing. And then you consider that all this stuff has to be put together and painted. Like, that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time, Froggy.
Yeah. It also made it really hard for people to play with Legends characters, because if you're not playing at like a tournament or something, you can basically agree to play with Legends models.
Okay.
Like, that's fine. But because of the changes that they made, rewrote a lot of like characters and like faction rules to like pretty different things. So it just made it really hard to use Legends characters, because then they didn't have the new updated data sheets.
It's not compatible.
So I don't think that helped either, because then it was like people either agree and upgrade everything to 4th, or they just keep playing 3rd. So
yeah, and just to give you some perspective on the numbers, right? So we're talking about like post 4th edition release within the last 2-3 years, Warhammer 40k is 25 times more popular according to Google Trend data than Age of Sigmar, which is a staggering number. And when we look at things like, let's just say like subreddits, like the Warhammer 40k unofficial subreddit has 18,000 weekly contributors with 590k weekly visitors. And then on the Age of Sigmar subreddit, there's 2.7k weekly contributions. So significantly more people are into Warhammer 40k just as consumers and in the community. Why the heck hasn't Age of Sigmar blown up?
Games Workshop just doesn't want it to.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying here.
Games Workshop, they like 40k, they like 30k, they like Necromunda, they want to push those things. Like, that's what makes them money, and they've realized that, so that's what they're doing. And with the climb that Age of Sigmar has had to do since replacing essentially fantasy, like, it's just been an uphill struggle since then. And then with fourth, it was kind of like nail in the coffin for a lot of people. So, like, the sculpts in Age of Sigmar are like 10 times better than the sculpts for 40k. Like, as a painter, I prefer painting Age of Sigmar. But, like, I barely paint Age of Sigmar because I mainly get like commissions for 40k.
Right.
Because that's what's pushed more by Games Workshop.
Also, one thing I was kind of thinking about just now, Froggy, you know, we talk about things dying out. People die out. And Warhammer Fantasy has, or had, an older audience of people, just because, you know, it was the first IP that Warhammer, or Games Workshop rather, had. And when it comes to Age of Sigmar, I would imagine that a lot of fantasy players, they tried to give it a shot, and they picked up Age of Sigmar until this 4th edition release thing happened, and a lot of them have probably put it down. And it hasn't helped that Age of Sigmar has really not done anything to capture a new audience, to reach out to basically younger people in a way that 40k is doing. You know, we live in this unprecedented time where 40k has a handful of really good video games, and then it also has a handful of really good promotion on things like mobile devices, with something like Tacticus, which I wouldn't consider to be a quote-unquote good game, but it's certainly got a ton of players, and it certainly makes a ton of money for Games Workshop through the licensing. So yeah, there's this massive interest in 40k, and 40k is doing this great job of pulling in younger people, this new player base of people who could potentially be interested in the models and tabletop and all that, but also just the setting as a whole, because I want to engage with Age of Sigmar, but I can't because I'm a gamer first, and there is no good Age of Sigmar video game for me to play, which is sad.
Yeah. It's also like a kind of sign of the times as well. Like, when you were little, when I was younger, like, it was very much like playing with little knights on castles, you know? But nowadays, it's very much like everyone has a PC, everyone knows about Cyberpunk, everyone's seen all these space games. They want to play the space game. There's less interest overall in like knights and castles kind of fantasy stuff now, in my opinion, from what I've noticed.
I think that fantasy is still very big culturally. Whenever a good piece of fantasy media is released, people swarm it like carrion birds, like Game of Thrones or the World of Warcraft still has 9 million subscribers, which is crazy to me. And most MMORPGs are still like fantasy based. I think 40k is a very unique setting, and AOS is not doing anything to reach out to younger people because let's use your example of like most kids are kind of being raised on like computers and stuff. Most kids are being raised on tablets. At the very least, they might see a Warhammer 40k Tacticus ad, and they might pick up Tacticus. And they might be like, oh, this is really cool. Like, I really like these characters. I really like this game. And, oh, Warhammer 40k is this whole big thing. Oh my god, like Astartes. That was the craziest thing I've ever watched. But with Age of Sigmar, you don't really have that. You don't really have that on the community side of things, where people are making like these really crazy, cool fan animations of Age of Sigmar. And you don't really have it on the Games Workshop side of things as well. They're kind of just printing books and printing models. That's it.
Yeah, like if they made a Manor Lords game, but Age of Sigmar, that would be great. I'd play that so much. But it's not gonna happen. Same with like an Age of Empires for Age of Sigmar. Like it probably won't happen. Like there's I just don't think there's a lot of interest. Like we have games like No Man's Sky, right? And Cyberpunk, like I said, and like Stellaris as well. That's quite old though.
Yeah.
Like there's just been a lot of like space age games.
Well, a
Like,
lot of the
Lord of the Rings is old.
well, I think about
it was popular, but it was old.
well, I think about like Game of the Year, right? And like at least 5 or 6 of the most recent games of the year have been fantasy titles, like Elden Ring, Clair Obscure, Expedition 33, Baldur's Gate 3. Like, these are all really good fantasy games backed by really, really strong fantasy IPs. But when it comes to Age of Sigmar itself, I think we got to kind of like face the facts. The setting might be good, but it doesn't have any good, I guess, media or material. Again, there's no way for me to interact with the setting outside of books, which if I put basically the entire collection of Age of Sigmar books side by side with the fantasy series, the Stormlight Archives wins, probably 10 out of 10 in that kind of matchup, because Brandon Sanderson is a crazy author. I look at the Black Library authors and I see a bunch of authors who probably don't really want to pick up Age of Sigmar stories because they're busy writing the 40k ones because they know what their readers want.
There's not a whole lot of overlap between 40k and Age of Sigmar authors as well. They have a lot more authors in 40k. Yeah, it's surprisingly, it looks like GW has a surprisingly hard time finding authors for Age of Sigmar and fantasy.
That's sad, because they also have a hard time finding game development studios as well. Because if you're a game development studio, you're gonna want the 40k license, because you know that there's already an audience there. It's the safer option.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the pioneer of basically the flagship game that is going to allow Age of Sigmar to really blow up. That's a lot of pressure, and it's a huge investment risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I guess let's talk about the future then. So, what the heck can Games Workshop do to turn this ship around?
They need to find some game companies and be like, look, we will give you a lot of freedom over the lore and stuff, which I think is probably a big turnoff.
Yeah.
Because you have to be so like specific sometimes with GW stuff, because they're so protective of what they have, and just pay companies to make games and just be like, look, this is what we want, do it, kind of thing, rather than waiting for a games company to come to them and be like, we have this idea, do you like it? And then they're like, no.
I think that's the approach that they have to take as well, mostly because I see what they're trying to do with I know they've got like an Age of Sigmar animated series that they're putting on Warhammer Plus, and it looks good and everything, it looks decent, but how does that help discoverability for Age of Sigmar when you put it behind a paywall? Like, not everybody has Warhammer Plus. One of the reasons why so many people are excited for Astartes 2 is because everyone watched Astartes. It's because it was just uploaded onto YouTube, just, without any bells and whistles. One of the reasons why Space King is so good is because it's accessible. It's a fan-made 40k thing that is accessible. And in order to develop that kind of community support, there needs to be a give and take. There needs to be like an investment in the community. And like you said, Games Workshop just does not seem to be doing that right now. They could easily release that AOS animation or show just onto their channel. Basically just to try to get people engaged with the setting even more than they already are, if you are engaged with AOS, or to get newcomers into the setting.
Yeah. It's also like we've had that 500 Worlds trailer, right? It was like beautifully animated. It was really pretty and everything. I can't remember seeing an Age of Sigmar trailer similar.
It was probably the last edition trailer, right?
Probably.
Yeah. Because they generally...
Whereas we get trailers like that for 40k like every couple of months, it seems.
Pretty much, yeah. Anytime they want to do a reveal.
Yeah. Like, if they did as many as those for Age of Sigmar as 40k, then there would probably be a lot more interest in Age of Sigmar. But again, they don't really care about Age of Sigmar, so
Yeah,
from what it looks like.
that's pretty insane. I'm sure that nobody at Games Workshop would ever admit it, but it seems like that's kind of what the numbers indicate when it just comes to overall community interest. And I'm sure that there will be people who listen to this conversation and they're going to defend Age of Sigmar, they're going to defend Games Workshop, and they're going to be like, you guys have no idea what you're talking about. But I'm just looking at the numbers, guys. Like, I'm just looking at the data that is in front of me, and it actually looks like Froggy's conclusion is correct. It seems like Games Workshop just does not care about making sure that Age of Sigmar is as good as it can possibly be. If anything, from what I could make of like the 4th edition release and retiring all those kits, it seems like they're just kind of trying to squeeze as much money that they could out of a dying fan base. And it's sad. It's really sad.
Yeah. It's like with the book releases, right? With the book of the year, all of the books of the year for 2025 in the top 10 were 40k, 30k books. There was no Age of Sigmar in that. There was no fantasy in that.
Is that community vote, or is that like the amount of books that were sold, or?
It's a community vote.
Okay, yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah. If, like, there weren't a lot of Age of Sigmar books released last year, so it could just be that because there weren't as many books, there weren't as many to vote on compared to 40k, 30k. But there was also less books because they didn't try very hard to find
outreach for new authors or better authors or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
That is. This has been, fascinating to learn about Age of Sigmar and everything like that, Froggy. Thank you so much for coming on.
It's just such a shame because they have such nice models. They have such nice sculptors.
I think, look, title of the video, I think Age of Sigmar is good. I just think that Games Workshop needs to do more with it. And I think that's probably the general consensus of anybody looking into this IP, or anybody who's a fan of the IP.
Yeah, I agree. It's
awesome.
A shame.
Well, guys, head over to Froggy's channel and subscribe, especially if you enjoy discussions like this one. And of course, subscribe to me as well. Like the video. It's been a pleasure, Froggy. Have a good night, guys.
You too. Bye-bye.
The Emperor protects.